The Great Hall of Velaris was made of crystal that had grown for 10,000 years. Light moved through its walls like water, painting everything in soft colors that humans could not name. Princess Yuna stood at the center of this beauty, and she felt nothing but cold anger in her silver blood. Her people, the Velari, were tall and graceful. Their skin was pale like moonlight, and their eyes held the wisdom of ages. They had ruled this part of the galaxy since before humans learned to make fire. They had built cities of living crystal. They had mastered technologies that other species called magic. They were proud, and they had every right to be Dot, and now her council wanted her to marry a human. Yuna looked at the old ones who sat before her. They wore robes of woven light, and their faces showed nothing. They had made this decision without asking her. A political marriage, they called it. A necessary alliance. The Wrath Collective grows stronger each year, said Elder Junho, the oldest of the council. His voice was like wind through glass. They've consumed 3 civilizations in the past century. The Moravi are gone. The Thaxian worlds are empty. The Kelveth sing no more. We cannot stand alone, so we sell our princess to savages? Yuna's voice was sharp. Humans have been in space for 300 years. We have been here for 10,000. What can they possibly offer us? Numbers, said another elder. Fury. They breed like insects and fight like cornered animals. The Wrath fears nothing in this galaxy, but they approach human space with caution. There is something in these creatures that gives even the hive mind pause. Yuna wanted to laugh. She had seen the reports on humans. Short-lived creatures who killed each other over patches of dirt and disagreements about invisible gods. They aged and died in what felt like moments to her people. Their technology was crude, their culture was young, and their ships were ugly blocks of metal that moved through space with all the grace of falling rocks. I will not do this, she said. Elder Junho stood slowly. He was 3,000 years old, and he had seen empires rise and fall. You will, princess, because if you do not, your children will have no empire to inherit. The Wrath is coming, and when they arrive, all our crystal cities and ancient wisdom will mean nothing. We need allies who know how to bleed. The human arrived on a gray ship that looked like a weapon. It had no beauty, no elegance. It simply existed to move through space and kill things that got in its way. Yuna watched it land from her tower window and felt her heart sink. His name was Hondo Yun, and he was everything she had feared. He was short by Velari standards. His skin was brown, the color of earth, and his eyes were dark like deep water. He walked down the ramp of his ship with a small bag over his shoulder, looking around at the crystal spires with an expression she could not read. He did not seem impressed. He did not seem afraid. He seemed like a man who had seen many things and expected nothing from any of them. The welcoming ceremony was a disaster. Dohyun stood silent while the court musicians played songs that had been written before his species existed. He bowed correctly, but without grace. When Lord Tai Huan, Yuna's younger brother, made a joke about keeping him on a leash, Dohyun simply looked at him with those dark eyes and said nothing. Does it not speak? Tai Huan asked the crowd, and laughter filled the hall. Perhaps we should teach it tricks. Sit, human. Roll over. Dohyun turned to Yuna. Your Highness, he said. His voice was quiet and calm. Thank you for receiving me. I know this arrangement was not your choice. It was not mine either. I will try to be as little trouble as possible. Then he walked away, following a servant to his quarters, leaving the court in confused silence. The weeks that followed were strange. Yuna had expected the human to complain, to demand respect, to behave like the barbarian she knew he must be. Instead, he was quiet, almost invisible. He attended ceremonies and sat in the back. He learned their language, Not just the simple trade words, but the old court dialect that even some Valari found difficult. He read their histories in the great library, working through texts that would take a human lifetime to finish. He also built a garden outside his quarters. There was a small courtyard that no one had used in centuries. Da-Hyun brought soil from somewhere and began planting things. Vegetables, the servants told her. Earth vegetables. Ugly things with rough leaves and strange smells that the Valari found disgusting. Yuna watched him from her window one evening. He was on his knees in the dirt, his hands buried in the soil, carefully moving seedlings from one place to another. His face was peaceful in a way she had never seen on anyone. Like this small patch of earth was the only thing in the universe that mattered. He eats alone, her handmaid told her. The kitchen staff say he never complains about the food, even though Valari food must taste strange to him. He thanks them every time. They do not know what to make of him. Has he spoken to anyone? Made demands? Tried to assert himself? No, Your Highness. He reads. He gardens. He sleeps. That is all. The wedding came on a day when 3 moons hung in the sky. Yuna wore a dress of crystallized starlight that had been in her family for 800 generations. Do-Hyun wore a simple black suit that he had brought from Earth. They stood before the altar of the first crystal, and they spoke the words that would bind them together. Yuna's hand shook as she reached for the ceremonial cup. Do-Hyun's hand was steady. Their fingers touched for just a moment, the first time their skin had made contact, and she felt warmth where she expected cold. He signed the contract. She signed a contract. The crowd watched in silence. No one cheered. No one threw flowers. This was not a celebration. It was a transaction. That night, they went to separate rooms. Yuna lay in her bed and stared at the ceiling, wondering what she had done, wondering what humanity could possibly offer that was worth her freedom. In his garden, Da-Hyun knelt in the moonlight and planted seeds for tomatoes. His hands moved with care and patience. His face showed nothing, but if someone had looked closely, they might have seen his lips moving. He was counting. Breaths, heartbeats, the small moments of peace before the storm. He knew was coming. He had not told them what he really was. They had not asked the right questions. The Valari saw a logistics officer, a paper pusher, a nobody that Earth had sent because humans did not value this alliance enough to send someone important. They were wrong about all of it, but Do-Hyun had spent years learning to be invisible, to be underestimated, to be forgotten. It was safer that way, for everyone. He finished planting and stood, brushing dirt from his knees. The crystal spires of Velaris glowed around him like frozen fire. Somewhere in the dark between stars, the Wrath Collective was growing, feeding, preparing. They would come eventually. They always did. And when they came, Do-Hyun hoped he would not have to become the man he used to be. He hoped this garden would be enough. He hoped peace would be enough. But hope, he had learned, was a luxury that rarely lasted. 6 months passed like water through crystal. The seasons on Velaris were long, and Do-Hyun learned their rhythms. He learned when the 3 moons aligned and turned the sky purple. He learned when the crystal flowers bloomed and filled the air with music that humans could almost hear. He learned to be patient. His garden grew. The tomatoes came first, red and fat and strange among the elegant Valari plants. Then the peppers, the cucumbers, the small onions that made the kitchen staff cover their noses. He traded some vegetables with the servants for seeds from distant worlds, and his garden became a strange mix of many planets. Ugly, the Valari called it. But alive, Yuna watched him sometimes from her window. She did not know why. Perhaps she was waiting for him to reveal his true nature. Perhaps she was simply curious about this strange creature she had married. He never seemed to notice her watching. They spoke rarely. At formal events, they stood side by side, and said the correct words. In private, they moved around each other like ghosts, sharing space but never touching. Do-hyun asked for nothing. He complained about nothing. He simply existed, quiet and small and easy to forget. Then the wrath came, and everything changed. The first colony went silent on a day when the sky was clear and beautiful. A mining world on the edge of Valari space, home to 50,000 souls. One moment they were sending routine reports. The next, nothing. The rescue ships found empty buildings and strange organic residue on every surface. No bodies, no survivors. No explanation needed. The Wrath Collective had arrived. 3 more colonies fell in the following weeks. A research station. A farming world. A military outpost that was supposed to hold for months and lasted 6 hours. The Valari Council met every day, their ancient faces showing fear for the first time in Yuna's memory. Admiral Sojin, commander of the Crystal Fleet, presented her battle plans in the Great War Room. Her ships were beautiful, grown from living crystal over centuries. They sang when they flew, harmonics that could shatter enemy hulls. For 2,000 years, no enemy had stood against them. "We will establish a defensive line around the inner worlds," she said, her hand moving through the holographic display. "The outer colonies will be evacuated where possible. We cannot save everyone, but we can save most." "How many will you abandon?" asked Elder Junho. 40 million. Perhaps more. Sojin's voice was steady, but her eyes were not. "The wrath moves too fast. We cannot protect everything." The room fell into heavy silence. 40 million souls left to feed the enemy. The math was terrible but simple. Save most by sacrificing some. "May I observe the tactical briefings?" Every head turned. Do-hyun stood in the doorway, his dark eyes moving across the holographic maps. He had entered so quietly that no one had noticed. Yuna felt a strange flutter in her chest, though she could not say why. Lord Taiwan laughed, a cruel sound that echoed off the crystal walls. "The human wants to play soldier. How amusing." "Yes, little husband, come watch how real warriors plan for war. Perhaps you will learn something to tell your primitive people." Do-hyun walked into the room and took a seat in the corner. He did not respond to the insult. He simply watched, his face showing nothing, his dark eyes taking in every detail of the tactical display. For 3 days, he watched. He sat through briefings about fleet movements, about wrath attack patterns, about the desperate mathematics of which worlds to save and which to abandon. He asked no questions. He made no comments. The Valari forgot he was there, which was exactly what he wanted. On the 4th day, Admiral Sojin presented her final plan. The Crystal Fleet would form a sphere around the 5 core worlds of the Valari Empire. The outer territories would be left to their fate. It was the best strategy their ancient wisdom could produce. "You will lose." The words fell into the room like stones into still water. Everyone turned to look at the human in the corner, who had spoken for the first time in days. Taiwan's face twisted with anger. "What did you say?" Do-hyun stood slowly. His movements were careful, controlled, like a man who knew exactly how much space his body occupied. "I said you will lose. This plan will fail. The wrath will break through, and everyone in this room will die. You dare speak to us of war?" Sojin's voice was ice. "Your species has been killing each other with sticks while we built empires across the stars." "Yes." Do-hyun walked toward the holographic display. "We have been killing each other since before we could speak. We have fought over food, over water, over ideas, over nothing at all. We have developed 10,000 ways to destroy our enemies and ourselves. We are very, very good at violence." He looked at her with those dark, calm eyes. "And that is why I know you will lose." He touched the display, and it zoomed out to show the entire sector. The Wrath does not fight for territory. They fight for biomass. Every colony you abandon, every world you sacrifice, every person you leave behind becomes fuel for their expansion. In 3 months, they will have doubled their numbers. In 6 months, they will reach your defensive line with 10 times the force you are preparing for. Then, what do you suggest? Yuna heard herself ask. The room turned to look at her, surprised that she had spoken to her husband directly. Dahyun met her eyes. Something passed between them, though neither could say what. You cannot defend against the Wrath. You must destroy them. Completely. Leave nothing behind to grow, to adapt, to remember. They are a single organism spread across many bodies. Kill the body, and the mind survives. Kill the mind, and the bodies become confused, easy prey. He paused. But to kill the mind, you must be willing to do things that your ancient wisdom considers barbaric. Taowan stepped forward, his hand on his ceremonial sword. And what would a logistics officer know about killing? What battles have you fought, human? What enemies have you faced? The room was silent. Dohyun looked at Taowan for a long moment, and Yuna saw something flicker in his dark eyes. Something old. Something dangerous. I was not always a logistics officer, he said quietly. That was the role your intelligence services could verify. What I was before that your databases do not have clearance for. He turned back to the display. Humanity has fought 17 wars that officially never happened. Against enemies that no longer exist, because we erased them so completely that even their memory is gone. I was part of that erasing. He walked toward the door, then stopped. I came here hoping to be a gardener, hoping that peace would be enough. But the Wrath is coming, and your beautiful ships and ancient tactics will not save you. If you want to survive, you will need to learn to fight like humans, like animals, like monsters. His voice dropped to almost a whisper, and I am very good at teaching that lesson. Then he was gone, leaving the war room in stunned silence. That night, Yuna found him in his garden. He was kneeling in the soil, his hands buried in the earth, breathing slowly and deeply. Moonlight painted him in silver and shadow, and for a moment, he looked like something other than human. Who are you? She asked Dot. He did not look up. Someone who hoped he would never have to be himself again. She knelt beside him in the dirt, not caring about her crystal dress or the proper behavior of a princess. The council is afraid. They do not know whether to trust you or kill you. Both are reasonable choices. He pulled a weed with gentle fingers. I have given them reason for both, and what should I choose? Finally, he looked at her. His dark eyes held depths she had never noticed before. Pain, weariness, and underneath it all, something burning that she could not name. That depends, he said softly, on whether you want to survive. The next morning, Admiral Sogjin requested a private meeting with the human called Han Do-yun. The Valari had ruled the stars for 10,000 years, but they had been at peace for the last 2,000. They had forgotten what it meant to truly fight Dot. It was time to remember. The world of Miran was beautiful. It was a planet of blue oceans and green forests, home to 3 billion Valari who had never known war. Children played in crystal gardens. Artists created music that took centuries to complete. Philosophers debated questions that had no answers and no need for answers. Then the sky turned black with Wrath ships, and everything changed. The Wrath Collective moved like a living storm. Their ships were not built but grown, organic things of bone and flesh and hunger that twisted through space in patterns that made no sense to logical minds. They did not conquer worlds. They consumed them. Every living thing, every plant and animal and person, became fuel for their endless expansion. Admiral Sogjin's crystal fleet met them at the edge of Miran's system. 120 ships of living crystal, the pride of the Valari Empire, singing with ancient harmonics designed to shatter any enemy. For 10,000 years, no force had stood against them. The wrath adapted in 4 hours. Their organic hulls grew dampening membranes that absorbed the crystal songs. Their formations shifted and changed like water, never staying still long enough to target. They did not fight like a fleet. They fought like a single creature with 10,000 bodies. "We are losing," Sojin reported to the command center. Her voice was steady, but her eyes showed the truth. "Their adaptation rate is beyond anything in our records. We cannot maintain formation." In the great war room of Velaris, the council watched in horror as their beautiful ships began to die. Crystal hulls shattered. Escape pods streamed like tears into the void. The harmonic cannons that had destroyed armadas now barely scratched the Wrath's mutating hides. "Evacuate Naran," Elder Junho ordered, his ancient voice cracking. "Save who we can." "There is no time," said a tactical officer. "The Wrath is already entering atmosphere. Ground invasion will begin within the hour. 3 billion souls. Mothers and children and artists and dreamers. All about to become food for an endless hunger. I need a shuttle." Everyone turned. Dohyun stood at the edge of the room, still wearing the dirt-stained clothes from his garden. His face was calm, but his eyes burned with something that made even the elders step back. "A shuttle?" Taiwan laughed, though the sound was hollow with fear. "To do what? Plant vegetables on the Wrath ships? To end this." Dohyun walked toward the tactical display. "Admiral Sojin, I am requesting direct neural link to your tactical network." Sojin's face appeared on the screen, smoke and fire behind her. "You? A human? Our neural systems would burn out your primitive brain in seconds. My brain is not primitive." Dohyun's voice was flat. "Earth developed neural augmentation for soldiers like me. Classified technology. The kind that officially does not exist." He touched the base of his skull. "I can process tactical data faster than your quantum computers. I can see patterns that your systems miss. But I need direct access." "This is madness," said an elder. "We cannot give a human control of our fleet." "You do not have a fleet anymore." Dohyun pointed at the display. "In 30 minutes, you will have wreckage. In 45, the Wrath will be feeding on Moran's population. In 60, they will have enough biomass to launch the final assault on Valoris itself." He looked at each elder in turn. "I am not asking for permission. I am telling you that this is the only choice you have left." Yuna stepped forward. "Give him access." "Princess, you cannot. I am your future empress." Her voice was cold and hard as crystal. "And I am giving an order. Let my husband try to save us." The silence that followed was heavy enough to drown in. Then Admiral Sojin nodded slowly on the screen. "Access granted. May the ancestors forgive us if this is a mistake." Dohyun took a shuttle. A small diplomatic transport not designed for combat. He launched into the void while the battle raged around him, a tiny metal seed among giants of crystal and flesh. "Neural link established," said a voice in his mind. "Warning. Data stream exceeds recommended human parameters by 400%. "Override warnings," Dohyun said. "Show me everything." The universe exploded into his consciousness. He saw every ship, every weapon, every movement. He felt the crystal fleet like extensions of his own body, each vessel a finger he could flex. He felt the Wrath too, their hive mind pulsing with alien hunger, their command structure hidden beneath layers of chaos. And then he saw the pattern. The Wrath was not chaotic. It was too organized to seem organized. There were nodes hidden in the swarm, command creatures that directed the others like puppet masters. Kill the puppeteers, and the puppets would stumble. "All ships," Dohyun broadcast, his voice carrying through the tactical network. "This is Han Dohyun. I am assuming tactical command. Do not question orders. Do not hesitate. Just act. Who gave you authority? Shut up and listen. Dahyun's voice was different now. Harder. Colder. The gardener was gone, and something else had taken his place. Attack Group 1, full burn toward coordinates I'm sending. Attack Group 2, form on the damaged cruiser Starfall. Attack Group 3, I need you to die. What? The Wrath command node is behind their center formation. To reach it, I need a distraction. Attack Group 3 will charge directly into their main force. You will not survive, but your sacrifice will create a gap that Attack Groups 1 and 2 can exploit. Silence on the channel. Then a calm voice. This is Captain Minji of the Starfall. Attack Group 3 acknowledges. We are already dying. Let it mean something. The battle shifted. Do-yoon conducted the Crystal Fleet like an orchestra of death. Ships that had danced elegantly now fought with brutal efficiency. Crystal harmonics targeted specific weak points he identified in real time. Formations broke and reformed in patterns that confused the Wrath's adaptive systems. Attack Group 3 charged into the heart of the enemy and was destroyed. But in their death, they created a gap. Starfall, ramming speed on the command cluster. Sir, we still have crew. Evacuate who you can. 10 seconds. Dahyun's voice held no emotion. 8, 6, 4. Launch escape pods now. 2-1. Impact. The cruiser Starfall, pride of the inner fleet, drove itself into the Wrath command node like a spear into a heart. The explosion was visible from Moran's surface. The Wrath swarm shuddered. For the first time in the battle, they hesitated. Their coordination failed. Ships that had moved like one creature began to scatter like frightened animals. All ships, weapons free. Target anything that moves. Leave nothing alive. The slaughter that followed would be remembered for 10,000 years. When it was over, the Wrath Armada was gone. Not defeated. Not retreated. Gone. Every organic ship destroyed. Every command node eliminated. The void was filled with debris and silence. Do-hyun's shuttle landed in the flagship's bay. He stepped out covered in blood that streamed from his nose, his ears, his eyes. The neural link had pushed his augmentations beyond their limits. His hand shook so badly he could barely walk. Yuno was waiting. Casualties? She asked. 12,000 Valari dead. His voice was a broken whisper. 3 billion saved. That is not what I asked. She stepped closer, seeing him clearly for the first time. Seeing the monster he had hidden beneath the gardener's gentle mask. How many battles like this have you fought? He swayed on his feet. 17. Earth calls them the quiet wars. Conflicts that never officially happened. Enemies that were erased from history because we were very thorough. He met her eyes, and she saw something breaking inside him. I was the one who did the erasing. Medics rushed forward to catch him as he collapsed. The last thing he heard before darkness took him was Yuna's voice, ordering them to save him. When he woke 3 days later, he was in a Valari healing chamber. Crystal light washed over him, repairing damage that human medicine could not touch. And Yuna was sitting beside his bed, reading one of the ancient texts from her library. The council wants to give you a title, she said without looking up. They are calling you the Warbringer, the human who burned. I do not want titles. His voice was rough. I want to go back to my garden. She finally looked at him. Her silver eyes held something he had never seen before. Not fear, not disgust. Something softer. Something almost like understanding. Your garden survived, she said. The servants have been watering it while you slept. The tomatoes are ready for harvest. He closed his eyes, and a single tear ran down his cheek. Good, that is good. She reached out and took his hand. Her skin was cool against his warmth, silver against brown, alien against human. but the connection was real. "Rest," she said softly. "The war is not over. The wrath will return. Today, you earned the right to rest." He slept, and for the first time in years, he did not dream of fire. The weeks after the battle were strange and quiet. The Valari Empire had been shaken to its core. For 2,000 years, they had believed themselves untouchable, their crystal ships invincible, their ancient wisdom sufficient for any challenge. One day of real war had shattered that illusion like glass dot, and at the center of this new reality stood a human who grew vegetables in his spare time. Daihun's wounds healed slowly. The neural link had damaged something deep inside his brain, something that Valari medicine could soothe but not fully repair. He had headaches that lasted for days. Sometimes his hands shook so badly he could not hold a cup. Sometimes he forgot words, standing in silence while his mind searched for language that had temporarily vanished. He spent most of his time in the garden Dotted had grown during his recovery. The servants had not only watered his plants but added to them, bringing seeds from their own home worlds as gifts for the man who had saved 3 billion lives. His small patch of earth vegetables was now surrounded by flowers from a dozen planets. A strange and beautiful chaos of colors and shapes that no one had ever seen together before. He knelt in the soil each morning, his damaged hands working carefully, coaxing life from seeds. The court watched him and did not know what to think. This was the Warbringer? This quiet man with dirt under his fingernails and a gentle smile for every plant he touched. Lord Tahewan was the first to seek him out. Yuna's brother had stopped laughing after the battle. He had watched the tactical recordings of Dahyun's command, watched how the human had moved their ships like pieces in a game that only he could see. Taewan was young and proud, but he was not stupid. He recognized a master when he saw one. "Teach me," Taewan said, standing at the edge of the garden. Dahyun did not look up from the flower he was planting. "Teach you what?" "To fight like you do. To see patterns like you do." Taewan's voice was humble for the first time in his life. "I mocked you when you arrived. I called you a pet. I was a fool, yes." Dahyun finally looked up. "You were. But fools can learn, if they choose to." He gestured at the ground beside him. "Start with this, with gardening, with patience, with understanding that some things cannot be rushed, with learning to see what is really there instead of what you expect to see." Dahyun handed him a small shovel. "The wrath will return. When they do, you will need to be ready. But readiness does not begin with weapons. It begins here, in the quiet moments, in the small acts of creation that remind us what we are fighting for." Taewan took the shovel. He knelt in the dirt beside the human he had once despised, and he began to learn. Others followed. Officers who had survived the battle, young nobles who had watched their certainties crumble, even some elders, ancient beings who had not touched soil in centuries, came to the garden to work alongside the human and hear his quiet wisdom. Dahyun taught them all, not just tactics and strategy, but philosophy. The human way of war, which was also the human way of peace. "We fight because we know we will die," he explained one evening, surrounded by students of all ages. "Every human is born knowing that their time is short. We do not have thousands of years like you. We have decades, sometimes less. This knowledge shapes everything we do. Does it not make you afraid?" asked a young officer named Sora, terrified. Every moment, Dahyun smiled, and there was sadness in it. But fear is not the enemy. Fear is the teacher. Fear shows us what matters. A creature that cannot die does not truly understand life. Humans understand it very well. We cram as much living as we can into our small years, because we know those years will end. He picked up a tomato from his garden, red and ripe and perfect. This fruit will rot in a week. A Valari crystal flower will bloom for decades. But the tomato gives food, gives seeds, gives life to whoever eats it. Its brief existence has purpose. He looked at his students. That is how humans fight. Not because we want to die, but because our deaths can have meaning, can protect what we love, can give others the chance to live. Una listened from her window. She had been listening every day, watching her husband transform from a quiet gardener into something else. A teacher, a leader, a bridge between her ancient people and his young, fierce species. That night, she went to the garden. Do-Yoon was alone, sitting on a stone bench he had built himself, looking up at the 3 moons. His face was peaceful in the silver light, though she could see the pain lines around his eyes that never quite went away. "My people are calling you a god," she said, sitting beside him. "The war bringer, the human who burned. They are building statues. I am not a god." He did not look at her. "I am just a man who is very good at killing, trying very hard to learn how to grow things instead." "Why?" She turned to face him. "Why did you come here? Why accept this marriage? You could have refused. You could have stayed on Earth, lived out your life in peace." He was quiet for a long time. When he spoke, his voice was heavy with memories. "I killed a world once. Not alone, not with my own hands, but I gave the orders that made it happen. An enemy species that would not surrender, would not negotiate, would not stop attacking human colonies no matter how many battles we won. So we ended them. Every ship, every station, every colony. We erased them so completely that most humans do not even know they existed." Una felt cold despite the warm night. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because afterward, I could not sleep, could not eat, could not close my eyes without seeing the faces of creatures I had doomed." He finally looked at her as she saw the ghost that lived behind his eyes. "I requested retirement. They said I was too valuable. So I requested a transfer to logistics, where I would push papers instead of buttons. They said fine, but they kept my augmentations active, just in case." He took her hand. His fingers were rough from garden work, warm against her cool skin. "When the request came for a human to marry a Valari princess, I volunteered. I thought perhaps, in a peaceful empire far from human space, I could learn to be something other than a weapon. I could plant gardens. I could watch things grow. I could forget what I was. And now? Now the wrath has reminded me." His grip tightened slightly. "I cannot escape what I am. But perhaps I can choose what I do with it. Not destruction for its own sake. Not killing because it is easy. But protection, creation, fighting so that others can live in peace." He smiled, small and sad. "Your garden taught me that." "My garden?" "Velarus. Your crystal cities and ancient songs and people who have forgotten what war means. You are what humanity might become if we survive long enough. What we should become. I want to protect that possibility." He paused. "I want to protect you." Una sat in the moonlight, holding the hand of a man who had destroyed worlds. And she realized that she was not afraid of him. She was not disgusted by his past. She understood, perhaps for the first time, why the universe had brought them together. "I want to learn," she said. "Learn what?" "Everything. The tactics. The history. Why humans fight like they are already dead, and why that makes you stronger instead of weaker." She squeezed his hand. "I want to understand you. Not the warbringer. Not the legend. You." He looked at her with surprise, the first genuine surprise she'd ever seen on his face. "Why?" "Because I think I married a good man who is carrying a heavy burden alone. I think perhaps he does not have to carry it alone anymore." She moved closer on the bench. "We began this marriage as strangers bound by duty. I would like to try again. As partners, As friends. Perhaps, eventually, as something more. The silence stretched between them, filled with moonlight and possibility. The tomatoes are ready for harvest, Dayun said finally. I could teach you how to pick them without bruising the skin. Yuna laughed, the first true laugh she had felt in months. That is your response to my offer of partnership? Tomato lessons? It is a start. He smiled, and this time the sadness was mixed with something warmer. Everything starts small. Seeds, friendships, love. You cannot rush growth. You can only create the conditions for it and wait. She leaned her head against his shoulder. It felt natural, though they had never been this close. Then teach me about Tomato's husband. And tomorrow, teach me about war. And the day after, perhaps we will find something new to learn together. They sat in the garden until dawn, talking about everything and nothing. Two souls from different worlds, different times, different ways of being. Finding common ground in the simple earth beneath their feet, the wrath would return. They both knew it. But for tonight, there was peace. And peace, Doyun had learned, was worth fighting for. Even worth killing for. Especially worth living for. 3 years changed everything. The Valari Empire was not the same. Civilization that had looked down on humans with ancient pride. Dohyun's teachings had spread through their military like fire through dry grass. Young officers trained in the brutal arts of human warfare alongside the elegant disciplines of their ancestors. Ships were rebuilt with hybrid technology, crystal beauty married to human efficiency. The defense grid around Valoris was now a maze of traps and killing zones that would make any attacker bleed for every step. But more importantly, the people had changed. They understood now that peace was not given. It was earned. It was protected. It was worth dying for. Daryu stood on the balcony of the royal palace, watching the sun rise over the crystal spires. His hair was gray at the temples now, his face lined with the marks of too many sleepless nights and too much responsibility. But his eyes were calmer than they had been 3 years ago. More at peace. Yuna joined him, her silver skin warm against his side. Their relationship had grown slowly, carefully, like the garden they now tended together. Trust first, then friendship, then something deeper that neither of them tried to name. They did not need words for it. They simply were. The scouts have returned, she said quietly. The wrath is coming. Doing nodded. He had expected this. The first battle had broken the Wrath's invasion force, but not the collective itself. Somewhere in the dark between galaxies, the hive mind had been rebuilding, growing, preparing for a final assault. How many ships? 10,000. Yuna's voice was steady, but he could feel her tension. Not a fleet. Their entire civilization. Every ship they have left, carrying every hive queen that survived. They have nowhere else to go. The species they consumed have left them nothing to eat. They come here or they die. Dohyun closed his eyes. 10,000 ships. Even with 3 years of preparation, the combined forces of the Alliance numbered perhaps 800 vessels. The mathematics were not in their favor. Call the War Council, he said. The council chamber was filled with representatives from a dozen species. The alliance Dohyun had helped build over 3 years included not just the Valari and humanity, but the desperate refugees of worlds the Wrath had touched. They had come seeking protection and found something more, purpose. A chance to fight back against the darkness that had taken everything from them. Admiral Sojin commanded the Crystal Fleet, her face scarred now from battles that had tested her in ways she never expected. Lord Taiwan led a battle group of his own, no longer the mocking prince, but a hardened warrior who had earned his position through blood and fire. Human commanders stood alongside Valari admirals, their different strengths woven together into something stronger than either alone. They are not coming to conquer, Dohyun said. studying the holographic display of the approaching swarm. "They are coming to die. Then we give them what they want," Tehuan said. His voice was hard, but his eyes held respect for the man who had taught him what war really meant. "No," Doyen shook his head. "We give them what they need." The room fell silent. Yuna moved to stand beside her husband, their hands finding each other without looking. "The Wrath are driven by hunger," Do-hyun continued. "Their biology demands constant expansion, constant consumption. They did not choose to be predators any more than a fire chooses to burn. They simply are what they are." He touched the display, zooming in on the command cluster at the center of the swarm. "But their hive queens can think beyond hunger. They can plan. They can communicate. And right now, they are terrified. Why should we care about their feelings?" asked the human admiral. "They destroyed civilizations. They ate children, because we are better than them." Do-hyun's voice was soft but carried to every corner of the room. "Because if we simply destroy them, we become what they are. Predators, monsters, and the next generation will fight the next threat with the same brutality. And the one after that, until we forget why we fight at all." He paused. "I have spent my life ending threats. I have erased species from existence. And every one of those victories left a universe a little darker, a little emptier. Today, I want to try something different." The battle began at the edge of the system. Do-hyun's neural network had been upgraded over 3 years, integrated with Valari crystal technology and human quantum processors. He could now link with 300 ships simultaneously, feeling each one as an extension of his will. It was painful. It was exhausting. It was necessary. The wrath came like a tide of flesh and hunger, their organic ships screaming across space toward the crystal worlds that held their last hope of survival. They were desperate, and desperate creatures fought without restraint. But Do-hyun had prepared for desperation. His fleet did not form a defensive line. Instead, they danced through the enemy formation like water through rocks, never stopping long enough to be caught, never engaging directly when they could strike and withdraw. He was not trying to destroy the Wrath fleet. He was trying to exhaust it. "Attack Group 5, fall back. Group 7, cover their retreat. Group 12, I need you to target the Hive Queens, not to kill, but to isolate. Separate them from the collective." The battle raged for hours. Ships died on both sides, crystal and flesh shattering in the void. But slowly, gradually, the Wrath formation began to fragment. The Hive Queens, cut off from each other by Do-hyun's surgical strikes, could not coordinate their forces. The swarm became confused, their movements erratic and uncoordinated. And then Do-hyun broadcast a message. He sent it in the Wrath's own neural frequency, a concept that human linguists had worked for years to understand. It was not words, not exactly. It was a feeling, an idea, pushed directly into the collective consciousness of the enemy. The message was simple. You do not have to be hungry anymore. The Wrath hesitated. For the first time in their existence, something other than hunger reached their minds. They did not understand it, but they felt it. "Cease fire," Do-hyun ordered his fleet. "All ships, hold position. What are you doing?" Sojin demanded. "We have them on the run. We have them confused. There is a difference." Do-hyun closed his eyes, focusing all his augmented consciousness on the message he was sending. They have never known anything but hunger, never known peace, never known kindness. I am offering them something new. The void fell silent. 2 fleets, mortal enemies, hung motionless among the stars. Then, slowly, one of the Hive Queens responded. Her message was raw, alien, barely comprehensible. But Do-hyun understood the core of it. "Why do you not kill us?" "Because I am tired of killing." His response carried the weight of 17 quiet wars, of species erased and worlds burned. Because I believe there is another way. Hours passed. The negotiation was unlike anything in galactic history, two species communicating in concepts rather than words, trying to bridge a gap of biology and culture that seemed impossible to cross. In the end, it was not Do-hyun who convinced the Wrath to surrender. It was the image he sent them, his garden, a small patch of earth where things from many worlds grew together. Ugly vegetables beside elegant flowers. Human seeds and Valari plants and species from a dozen planets, all thriving in the same soil. This is what we could build together, he told them. Instead of consuming, you could create. Instead of being hungry, you could be full. The Hive Queens conferred among themselves for a long, tense moment. Then they sent their answer. Teach us. The war ended not with destruction, but with adoption. The process took years. The Wrath could not simply stop being what they were, but they could learn to channel their hunger differently. Do-hyun established farming worlds where the Wrath could grow the biomass they needed instead of stealing it from others. He found scientists who could modify their biology, making them less dependent on constant consumption. He integrated their children into Valari schools, where young minds could learn new ways of being. It was not easy. There were setbacks, failures, moments when Do-hyun wondered if he had made a terrible mistake. But slowly, the former predators became something else. Farmers, builders, citizens of a galaxy that had once feared them. 10 years after the war, Do-hyun stood in his garden. It had expanded to cover an entire courtyard, a riot of plants from every species in the Alliance. Former Wrath workers tended the beds alongside Valari gardeners and human volunteers, their alien bodies learning the gentle work of cultivation. Yuna found him there, as she always did. Their children played nearby, twin girls with silver skin and brown eyes, impossible combinations of two species that should never have mixed. But love, Do-hyun had learned, did not care about should. Admiral Sojin wants you to address the Academy graduation, Yuna said. They are naming a new ship after you. The Gardener. Do-hyun laughed softly. They wanted to call me the Warbringer. You were. And then you became something else. She took his hand. That is what you taught all of us. That we can change. That we can grow. That even the hungriest creature can learn to be full. An old Wrath worker approached them, her alien body still strange, but no longer terrifying. She held out a fruit she had grown herself, offering it with awkward gentleness. For you, she said in broken but understandable common. I made this. I created. Do-hyun took the fruit. It was ugly, lumpy, not quite the right color. It was also the most beautiful thing he had ever seen. Thank you, he said. It is perfect.